The black crystalline mineral originium advances technology and grants magical abilities called arts but causes oropathy, a contagious disease. Discriminated against, the infected form the rebel group Reunion, destroying cities. Rose Island seeking a cure is led by the amnesiac doctor, the key to hope for the infected. A voice tells the doctor that it looks like she's been teetering on the edge of a cliff and apologizes for making her suffer again as she closes her eyes. Her eyes open to see a girl who happily sees that she's fine and reintroduces herself as Emiya. A voice tells her that the doctor's vitals look fine before Emiya is informed of an urgent call from Captain Doberman, who is telling her to exfiltrate immediately and avoid any contact. She asks what Reunion's doing here when there's no way they know about Doctor, and says they have to avoid engaging them at all costs. No matter what happens, it's like dodging your ex at a party. She apologizes to the doctor for what she has to go now and says they're going to get her dressed so they can leave. Emiya and her squad slowly make their way through the squads of Reunion without being seen and start going down a flight of stairs before she says they should rest a bit and gets informed that they can't reach Captain Doberman, which means she might have already engaged Reunion. The doctor starts heavily breathing, so Emiya hurriedly supports her and apologizes for pushing her too hard in this condition. She decides to carry the doctor and tells her squad that they have to be extra careful on their way to the rendezvous point. The doctor tries to say something, but isn't able to, so the others assure her that she doesn't need to do anything and that everything's okay. They scout from above and don't see any signs of a fight in the Reunion soldiers, so Emiya says they will search the area if they can't find Doberman there. They suddenly hear footsteps and try turning back, but a small group of Reunion soldiers find them and demand to know who they are, so Emiya says they're not their enemies, but the soldiers decide to thoroughly search them and warn them all to not make any moves. Doberman swiftly takes them down from behind, but the Reunion soldiers below them hear the commotion and hurry to stop them, so Doberman asks them to come with her since she's found a shortcut. When they successfully get away, Emiya informs her that they were able to regroup and get the doctor, so Doberman reveals that a large number of Reunion fighters have infiltrated the passage and seem to be looking for something, although their objective is still unclear. What is certain is that they definitely see them as enemies, so they should assume from now on that Reunion is guarding all the exits they're aware of. She adds that they have to fight since there's no time left and asks the doctor to lead the extraction operation since she's heard of her supreme commanding skills. Emiya gives her the PRTS and apologizes for pushing her hard, even though she's sure that they'll make it above ground safely with her in command. The PRTS asks the doctor to log in, but she wearily says she doesn't remember and asks who she is and who they are, shocking everyone. The others think she's joking, but a member remarks that it doesn't look like it since she's head report of patients experiencing memory issues after waking up from cold sleep and isn't aware of long it lasts or what the potential treatments are. Doberman tells Emiya that this situation is far outside what they planned for and says they need a new strategy for this operation, but Emiya remarks that the doctor will get them out of this predicament. For all of Rhodes Island, great, more pressure. I bet all she can think of is, why is everyone so dramatic? Doberman frustratingly questions what's fine about their commander, not remembering anything, so Emiya believes the memories might come back and says there's no evidence of the other memories not coming back. Doberman says she's being too optimistic like a child in front of a crane game machine, but agrees that they have to work with the manpower they got. Emiya assures the doctor that she'll remember everything and that she's very important to them all. They take down a Reunion member and arrive at an exit which Doberman had assumed was a no-go and wonders if she was overthinking it. A member says they still haven't been able to reach Rhodes Island because the signal has been jammed, so they decide to check the situation above ground before moving up. Doberman and a soldier cautiously approach the opening, but Emiya senses something and the soldier gets shot as Reunion soldiers suddenly start surrounding them from all sides. Captain Ace suddenly manages to contact them and warns them there's a flashbang coming and to cover their eyes and ears on his signal. Later, Emiya treats a member as the doctor unbelievably asks how they could do that to such a young girl. Emiya informs her that she can log into the PRTS using her fingerprint, so the doctor remarks that she wanted to save them, but Emiya says there's no need to rush. Doberman says they scouted the route to the secret shortcut and have confirmed that it's safe, so they'll be leaving in 10 minutes. A soldier greets the doctor and tells her to not worry about her amnesia, since they will have plenty of time to talk once they're back at Rhodes Island. He informs them that there are Reunion uprisings all over the city and it looks like they're all going wild out there. Emiya regretfully says that's only going to see them ostracized even further and explains to the doctor that the ones who ambushed them are the Reunion movement. They're a terrorist organization formed by people infected with the oropathy disease and started off just protesting the discrimination they faced, but they're finally showing their true colors. A soldier remarks that they should know the Ursa's government isn't going to take this lying down, which means they think they can win in a fight, and since the Ursa security forces haven't quelled them yet, it looks like Reunion might be right. He asks why they acted now when they're nearing a catastrophe, so Doberman remarks that they might have wanted to take advantage of the commotion. Suddenly, they notice a small army of Reunion soldiers driving out the Ursa's troops, so Doberman says they should avoid fighting for now and should leave through the back door, so the doctor gets up and says she'll walk without anyone's help. As they're leaving, Amiya suddenly notices a mother and her child heading straight towards where the Reunion army is and tries to go help, but Doberman stops he and explains that confronting them all head-on means certain death, so Amiya insists they can't just leave them be. Doberman angrily asks if she's aware of the situation they're stuck in and explains that if this drags on and they sustain more casualties, they won't be able to escape the catastrophes and all of them will die. Amiya tries calming her down, so Doberman reminds her that she's Rhodes Island's leader and needs to think about what to prioritize. Suddenly, the doctor logs in and dispatches drones to start searching for enemies, declaring that they can still save them. The soldier from before asks the doctor if she's sure she can fight in her current state, and Doberman says this is too much for her, with her memories gone, but Amiya believes in the doctor and asks her to take command. She tells Doberman that the doctor's ability to analyze and observe their surroundings is sharp as ever, which is why she's sure she will lead them to victory. Doberman agrees to trust her for now, but the Giga-Chad soldier reminds her that they don't have a choice since she's their superior. The mother desperately asks the Reunion troops to at least spare her child, but a soldier says he'll start with the kid first before an explosion suddenly occurs near them. They get blasted away before the Rhodes Island soldiers quickly start taking them down along with Amiya, who rains attacks on them. They get cornered, so the Reunion troop tries taking the child hostage, but the Chad soldier incapacitates him, successfully finishing their mission. Amiya asks the child if she's fine and assures her that her mother will be alright too, as Doberman praises the doctor and apologizes for her prior behavior. The Chad soldier remarks that she retained all her experiences, even with her memory gone, before the mother suddenly tells Amiya to stay away from her daughter because she's infected and asks to be left alone after thanking her for saving them. As they're walking away, Amiya hesitantly tells them to find somewhere safe as the child waves to her. A drone suddenly spots the Rhodes Island soldiers and a group gets ready to ambush them. Meanwhile, the Chad tells the soldiers that they're going to rendezvous with Mural and Scout through a park up ahead and goes to scope things out. Amiya thanks the doctor for worrying about her and remarks that she should explain why the mother didn't want her near her child. She explains that they are infected as well, just like the Reunion, and that oropathy is an infectious fatal disease which leads their bodies to slowly become crystallized before eventually fracturing and spraying infectious dust into the air, but there is still no cure for it. Most of Rhodes Island's personnel, along with her and Doberman, are recorded, and there is no recorded case of infection via bodily contact, but most uninfected are afraid to come near them. Doberman adds that discrimination and prejudice against the infected exists in every country, but they're especially stunned here in Ursus, and after using biased reporting, the Ursus government has instilled a psychological fear of oropathy, and most people think the infected should be exterminated. Reunion launched its insurrection to exact revenge on those who had ostracized him, so unless somebody puts an end to it, the cycle of hatred will continue. Amiya explains that Rhodes Island tries to help everyone affected by this disease, infected or not, and to solve all the problems caused by the oropathy, they try to protect as many as they can from the fighting, but that alone isn't enough, which is why they need to find a cure for oropathy and end the conflict at its source, which is why the doctor is their ray of hope. Before she lost her memories, she was the leading expert on oropathy and dedicated herself to finding a cure. Doberman remarks that there will come a day when she will know what they must do. Ace suddenly tells them to take the tunnel, so they get moving as Amiya asks how long they have until the catastrophe completely swallows the city, so Doberman says it'll take 3 hours. Amiya thanks the doctor for trusting her when they help the mother and her child and says she thinks of her as a friend before they get going. A news reporter states that thanks to the swift response of the Ursus guards, the riots in Chernobog are slowly being contained and the rioting has been quelled in most districts and public order is being restored. All citizens are advised to stay indoors until the Ursus guards have prevailed. The Reunion armies swiftly take out the Rhodes Island soldiers, and a woman tells her subordinates to kill everyone other than the girl with the hood. The Chad soldier listens to the news and remarks that they're pretty good at coming up with this much BS news, but Doberman says it's hard to believe the Ursus guards would get pushed into a corner. Amiya remarks that she doesn't think Reunion's capable of pulling strings behind the scenes, so Doberman says it's not out of the question, and their top priority right now is to get the doctor back to Rhodes Island, which is why they can't afford to help anyone right now. Ace assures Amiya that she's done very well and says all that's left is for them to regroup with Nero and Scout and evacuate. Amiya suddenly notices that the fog is getting thicker and Doberman questions if these are enemy arts or just standard weather in Ohio. The Chad soldier quickly orders everyone to form a circle around the doctor, who spots enemy drones and says all friendly Scout drones have been taken down already. Bullets suddenly start raining down on them, so they all scatter, and Amiya remarks that their objective was to split them up. Doberman informs her that Ace and his squad are fighting on the other side, but it doesn't seem like there are many enemies. She decides to fire a flare to find out who's manipulating the mist so that they can improve visibility. This is just average weather in Ohio. What's she talking about? She adds that they will work with backup to take down the enemies and get out of here, but Amiya suddenly notices that the doctor has disappeared. Meanwhile, a woman puts a knife to the doctor's throat and orders to not move if she doesn't want to be killed. The doctor informs her that she doesn't know anything before a child arrives and says he thought he was supposed to be in charge of this area, and addresses the woman as Crown Slayer, telling her to inform him about it in advance. He says he's a nice guy and agrees to forget about this if she leaves now, so Crown Slayer gets up. Meanwhile, Amiya and the soldiers notice the mist is clearing, and she confronts Crown Slayer and the child, telling them both to get away from the doctor. Crown Slayer tells the kid that she looks forward to seeing him miserably failing, and Doberman remarks that it doesn't look like the enemy commanders have taken a liking to each other. The child asks them to forgive Crown Slayer and lets the doctor go, so the Chad soldier says a lot of them are pretty badly hurt, and Doberman says they should find a spot to treat them soon. The child cheerily remarks that it looks like everyone's here and introduces himself as Mephisto, remarking that they should play a little game. Doberman tells the others to leave while she buys them time. They realize they're completely surrounded by Reunion soldiers before Mephisto says he isn't going to do anything to them. He remarks that they're a pharmaceutical company, but they do much more than just play with test tubes, fight shoddily to avoid taking lives, and have got a big crowd going along with that. He says they've piqued his interest, especially with the doctor, who's got her face hidden under the black hood. He asks where she's from and how she survived before telling the Rhodes Island soldiers to hand her over. Amiya declares that isn't going to happen, so he admits he would have let them go if they'd agreed and says they should play a game then. He says his Frafrayandides here will try to tear them to shreds, but if they take all of them down and they're all able to survive, he'll let them go. Amiya angrily asks why he's doing this when there's a catastrophe coming, so he declares that a catastrophe is the best time to party. Doberman angrily asks what he's after, so he says he's after nothing because the Rhodes Island soldiers dying means nothing to them and doesn't make a difference. He begins the game so that they can have some fun, but the soldiers quickly detonate gas bombs and scatter to get away. He remarks that they're no different from that coward. Crown Slayer and the Reunion troops start fighting the soldiers, but he notices that some of them, including Amiya and Doberman, are trying to take their injured to a safe spot and remarks that this is exactly what makes tormenting them so much fun.
Oh my god! Wow!
They corner and a troop is about to finish Doctor off, but he is blasted away as Nero and her group of soldiers arrive faster than you can say knife. She apologizes for being late and says she's here to bring them home. As the Reunion troops start falling left, right, and center like some useless Teen Rocket grunts, Mephisto angrily says they've ruined his game before Nero points her crossbow at him and says his men are way too sloppy because the Reunion fighters who captured the city's strongholds were much more effective. She furiously declares that they're just letting their rioters run around rampant and kill innocent civilians for their own selfish desires. He frustratingly tells his sniper Faust that he wants her shot through the mouth, but she blocks the bullet and gets pushed back, shocking Mephisto. He tells Faust to try again, but she doesn't go down. The Reunion soldiers start getting back up, so they quickly retreat as she frustratingly questions how they're still getting back up. Faust apologizes to Mephisto, but he says it's alright since Talulah should have taken Chernobog's command tower under her control by now. Mephisto decides to go pay her a visit and asks Faust if he can track Rhodes Island. He remarks that they will let her decide the fate of these insects and tells Faust to be careful, reminding him that his safety comes first because the men are his to waste. Rhodes Island stops at an apartment and Doberman asks everyone to bear with it for a little while since they'll be out of the city soon. Amiya remarks that they really trashed this place and remembers it's the Azazel Clinic. She tells the doctor that a person is taken straight into quarantine if they are tested with oropathy, which is why a lot of people here purposefully hide their infections and carry on with their lives. They receive their treatment in this clinic, which basically makes it a back alley clinic, although it looks like they had a run-in with Reunion as well. Amiya remarks that it looked like they were probably forced to pay some sort of ransom and refused to. A soldier remarks that they gave them the cold shoulder and might have done that with Reunion as well, so he probably had it coming. Emiya admits things must have been difficult for them, remarking that even if two people are infected, that doesn't make it any easier for them to trust each other. If you don't build a wall to protect yourself, you'll simply find yourself in harm's way is probably what they had in mind, so they can't be blamed for thinking that way. They'd want a place where the infected would not be ostracized, where they could live as human beings, and that's why they built Rhodes Island. There are a lot of people who still haven't opened their hearts, but most of the Rhodes Islanders are working together to overcome this barrier. The clinic was probably built to give the patients some comfort. Suddenly, Emiya realizes that she got hurt in the battle, so Nero hurriedly asks for a free medical operator. The doctor watches Emiya being treated, so Doberman remarks that she should probably tell her how the arts work. She explains that there's a mineral inside the tool the doctor is using named originium, and it's the source of their art's energy. She adds that it's only with this conduit that those with a natural aptitude can use arts, but the effects depend on the user. There are those who can heal, and those who can burn entire towns to cinders, but their civilization only exists because of the industrial application of these arts. Emiya adds that it's thanks to originium that they're blessed with the lives they live, but it's also the source of oripathy. She says that if you use the originium inside your body as conduit, you don't need in tools to use arts, since oripathy can even enhance your arts. Nero points out that it's a double-edged sword, since it's essentially using your life force as fuel and hastens the user's death. It's literally like playing every rogue-like indie game ever, but you only get 1 life instead of 5. The Chad soldier says that's the price you pay for these arts, and things wouldn't be so tough if there was a cure for oripathy. Doberman clarifies that this clinic didn't try to heal. It slowed down their patient's death, and Emiya admits that's all they can do for now. She says that's why they need to take the doctor back to Rhodes Island at all costs, but apologizes for pressuring her. The Chad soldier says they should get going now that everyone is treated, but it doesn't look like Scout's team is responding, so they should just head to the rendezvous point. Nero tells the doctor that she has a friend who's lost her memories too, but what's important isn't the past or the memories you've lost, it's your present and your future. At the rendezvous point, Doberman notices Scout's team hasn't arrived yet, and they wonder if it's a trap before suddenly learning there might be a fire nearby. Nero decides to scope out the square and says she and her squad will be depending on them for backup. The Chad soldier, Ace, suddenly remarks that something happened here and he hopes to someday tell them about it. They decide to hurry to the square, but a gigantic blast just gets shot towards them, so they quickly take cover, and Doberman realizes Talulah, the tyrant of the reunion, is here. Another blast fires and causes the building above them to collapse. Emiya single-handedly blocks Talulah's attack like the action hero you wish you could be, and declares that she will protect everyone. She hurriedly tells Doberman to get everyone out of there, but Nero wearily says she can't handle this by herself. Enraged, Emiya says she will protect everyone, even if her body gets shredded to pieces, before Talulah stops the attack and realizes it's her. Emiya wearily collapses, so the Rhodes Island soldiers start firing at Talulah to cover Emiya, but she easily blocks them like she's playing dodgeball and pushes Ace back with a shockwave. Doberman wonders why they stopped attacking before all their units are ordered to retreat, and the doctor is asked to command them. A voice tells them to go through a gap in the rubble of the collapsed buildings and to head to a place close to the evacuation zone once they're out of the square. Comets suddenly start raining down on them, and a member desperately shields herself before Emiya forms a barrier to protect them and wearily says this is the most she can cover. Talulah stands perfectly still despite her allies getting injured by the comets and asking for help. Emiya despairingly sees that she's ignoring the pleas of her subordinates and undoes the shield. Doberman asks if she's alright and says they should get going before the second wave starts. She asks Nero to lead the way before Ace suddenly shields them from an attack by Talulah and says they're letting down their guard. They hurriedly start gathering the soldiers to retreat, and he asks Emiya to get out of here while he holds Talulah. Ace and his squad ask them to leave and not worry about them since they'll be following soon, so Emiya and Doberman leave before the gap in the rubble suddenly gets filled. Shocked, Emiya hurriedly tries to clear a path, but she collapses from fatigue as Ace tells them to go on ahead without him since he'll be fine. He informs the doctor that there will come a day when she and Emiya will have to make a tough choice and stand against this cruel world, which is why he'll be counting on her to take care of Emiya. Later, Emiya wearily wakes up as Doberman quotes that the radiant night must always be the noble light that illuminates the way forward for the people. Emiya hurriedly asks the doctor about Ace and his team, but she doesn't answer, confirming her worst suspicions. Emiya says she's sure Ace will be fine since everyone at Rhodes Island is strong. As Ace is exhaustively facing off against Talulah, Mephisto seriously remarks that he doesn't get what drives them to these lengths.
Damn!
Talulah acknowledges that he's fighting to his very last breath and admits that's a true warrior, vowing to remember Rhodes Island. The girl corners Emiya and the others as Doberman worryingly says she didn't think it would be smooth sailing from here on out. The girl suggests they introduce themselves to break the ice and says they can call her W. I'm not too sure that relates well with Rhodes Island, who have constantly been taking L's. Emiya wonders if they've met before and asks what she wants, so W suggests they hand over the doctor, remarking that she came into this hellhole especially for a touching reunion. Doberman says this isn't even worth discussing and tells Emiya they shouldn't waste any time on her before Gyoru says she has what they came for and leaves, telling Emiya they'll see each other soon. Surprised, Doberman says it seems like something's up even if Gyoru left without doing anything, while Ace finds a soldier and asks if he's fine. He asks the man to calm down so that he can get patched up, but the man horrifyingly realizes Ace is missing an arm. He remarks that it's fine since he had two of them, but the man insists he shouldn't be walking in this state. Ace interjects and says the transport should be arriving at the evacuation zone soon, but it's all over if Emiya and the others get spotted. He decides to buy them some time and asks the guard to live on so that he can know losing an arm for his life was a worthwhile trade. Rose Island leaves on the plane, but Emiya suddenly reveals her heart is in a bit of pain. She holds the medic who's heavily crying and solemnly tells her that long ago someone told her after the battle, we have to hold back the tears until we're at home by ourselves. As they're on their way to Rhodes Island, Doberman points out some clusters on the ground and tells the doctor that they're originium too, like what they witnessed at the square. The originium crashes down to the ground like comets. And that's what catastrophes are, depending on the region. Catastrophes can take the form of blizzards or floods, but they always leave behind originium, which grows on the ground. Surprised, the doctor asks how that's possible when it's a mineral, so she admits she doesn't know the finer details, but the crystal veins eventually rupture and release originium particles. They gather in the sky and form clouds, which eventually causes a catastrophe to happen. The doctor sees that it's just like oropathy, which Doberman agrees with and admits it's similar to the fate that waits all infected because catastrophes, oropathy, and human hate have no end. Nero suddenly interjects and tells Doberman that she should rest as well, but Doberman remarks that she would rather talk to loosen up and thanks Nero. She asks the doctor if she can still see Chernobog and reveals that the city is built on top of a mobility device, which means it can move and avoid catastrophes. She says most cities in the world are nomadic cities, and it's easy to predict when a catastrophe will occur, so they can avoid disaster by literally moving the city out of harm's way. The doctor asks why Chernobog didn't do that earlier, and Doberman gravely admits there's something sinister behind this uprising. They see a group of people traveling by foot, so Doberman says they're probably heading for a city up ahead named Lungmen and guesses that they're infected who managed to somehow get out of Chernobog. Talk about a creative way to exposition dump, just have a character who has amnesia. The pilot announces that they will be landing soon, and they arrive at Rhodes Island where Nero asks for a stretcher and Doberman informs them that the doctor has finally fallen asleep and must have calmed down since they've landed. The doctor later wakes up and asks about her whereabouts, so the PRTS informs her that she has been resting in the reception room while her room gets prepared. She says she wants to go outside, so it agrees to take her to Emiya and informs her about a change of clothes left behind for her. It reveals that Emiya is currently on the deck and says I can help her familiarize with the facilities while they walk. She agrees and looks a bit worried before heading out. The PRTS explains that Rhodes Island is a land ship equipped with a variety of medical facilities. From the most advanced surgeries to drug prescriptions, they have everything, even special equipment used specifically in oropathy research, and all energy for their operations is produced on this ship. The ship mines and refines the originium used in power generation, and they also process originium alongside other heavy metals for trading with cities and corporations. The living quarters were designed for the comfort and well-being of their operators and patients and can help alleviate the physical and mental stress accumulated during missions and treatments. Here at Rhodes Island, a great number of them live together regardless of each individual's background, race, or infection status. On top of all this, due to the broad spectrum of Rhodes Island's activities, they also provide transport as well as a variety of other equipment and weapons. The doctor arrives at the rooftop and thanks the PRTS, remarking that the weight Emiya carries on her shoulders is extremely heavy. She tells Emiya that she should be in bed, so Emiya says she came here to get some fresh air because she couldn't stop thinking about what Talulah said. She admits she might just be an idealist full of empty promises, but she still wants to believe she's chosen the right path. She reveals that she's had doubts about the path she's chosen, so Talulah might have noticed that. The doctor tells Emiya that Ace said something in his last transmission. He said there would come a day when Emiya and her would have to make a stand against the world. She doesn't really understand what he means by that yet, but if Emiya perseveres with her ideals, she will surely clash with reality. Still, Ace believed that she would press forward on the right path. The doctor says she's right and admits she shouldn't lose sight of her goal at this point because she might be an empty shell now, but she'll complete herself bit by bit. She promises to help Emiya realize her ideals, so Emiya joyously thanks her but asks her to not push herself too much since they'll be given a new mission in 3 days, so they should rest up and recover their bodies by then. Later in a meeting, Doberman explains that they fulfilled their primary objective of getting the doctor out of Chernobog, albeit with great losses. Nonetheless, they were able to acquire a lot of information about Reunion, so some might call it a strategic success. She says they've determined that Reunion's next target will be Lungmen based on their research. She explains that it might not be as draconic as Chernobog, but Lungmen treats its infected really harshly as well. She adds that Dr. Kaltze has already left for Lungmen to prepare a contract with its leader, one that allows Rhodes Island to operate openly inside Lungmen's borders, which is why they want Emiya and the doctor to head to Lungmen to work with Dr. Kaltze to get this contract signed. She says she and Nero will be heading out for another mission and tells them all to be extra careful since Reunion's moves are unpredictable, and Emiya tells the doctor that she looks forward to working with her. Misha tells a small group of children to stay hidden to avoid getting sighted and helps light their mood before leaving, remarking that they have to live. A Reunion troop says they should fall back before he and his partner are unexpectedly taken down from behind, and Yedo informs Emiya that they've taken 2 guys down. Emiya tells the doctor that the enemy has been suppressed and thanks Liskarm and Franka, but they tell her to not mention it since this is normal work for Black Steel. The doctor inquires about Black Steel, leading to yet another lore dump as Emiya explains that Franka and Liskarm work for Black Steel Worldwide, international PMC, and have a partnership with Rhodes Island and often come along with them on their operations. They ask Emiya if she's sure she has enough time, so she checks the time and says they should hurry. The infected entering Lungmen from Chernobog are stopped by the guards who declare that they're being refused entry and tell them to go back the way they came. A ragged-looking man desperately asks if they want him to go back to the waste and questions how they can be so heartless. Apparently, this guy just can't take a hint and tries to rush in, so a woman shoves him away and points her blade at his throat, telling the guards to take them in as the men desperately ask to be helped. Emiya meets Madame Chen, who remarks she was told the meeting would be at 2200 and sees that Rhodes Island can't even be punctual. Emiya apologizes and introduces the doctor as a consultant from Rhodes Island, so she tells them to come with her, after which Franka and Liskarm decide to leave for now since they got to report to their superiors. They arrive at a colorful-looking Lungmen, which Emiya watches in awe and remarks that she's never seen buildings this tall like an average unlucky kid on a Make-A-Wish trip. Madame Chen says they've heard the gist of what happened in Chernobog. The survivors are pouring into Lungmen and the infected are among them, so it's pointless to ask for their help. Emiya asks why they would go so far as to reject the infected, so she just says it's for the safety of their citizens. They enter a tall building where Madame Chen introduces them to Chief Wei and says the Rhodes Island representatives have arrived. Chief Wei says they did good work and Kaltze is surprised to see Doctor with Emiya. They sit down and Kaltze tells Wei that he must already be aware of the fact that quarantining the infected won't keep the impending reunion threat out of the cities, so if Lungmen continues to rely on its existing infected policies, the losses suffered at Reunion's hands will be immense. Madame Chen says they already made preparations in anticipation of a reunion attack. Kaltze asks if Lungmen has ever been in a conflict with a group of infected insurgents. It's a good thing to have a contingency for an attack you anticipate. However, if they're planning on letting them make the first move, they're acting extremely naive. Madame Chen furiously asks if they're implying the Lungmen Guard Department is no match for an infected group. She explains that Reunion wants to expand their influences, so they need more than just resources. They need good recruits, echo the infected. Here, they can get large amounts of both in one fell swoop, so to Reunion, there might be no better target than Lungmen. Kaltze remarks that Rhodes Island has managed to learn a thing or two from their reunion, so they can offer them some advice. Wei sighs and remarks that their offer is a contract and they're not offering advice out of the goodness of their hearts, so if they're looking to secure this contract and form a partnership, they should offer them some information that might benefit them first. Kaltze prefaces that she means no offense when she says this, but the knowledge and intelligence they have gained from their battles in Chernobog are all rooted in Rhodes Island's actual combat experience, so it will not be useful without them being involved. Madame Wei says Lungmen has no choice but to accept this offer from Rhodes Island and take on the reunion threat with them, so Madame Chen hurriedly argues that they can't allow these infected outsiders to meddle with their affairs. Wei calms her down and reminds her that they are guests before showing them records of their battles with Reunion prior to them arriving here. He asks Shen what she thinks of Rhodes Island's combat capabilities, so she acknowledges that the vanguard, rearguard, and their response to the terrain and enemy positioning are satisfactory, so they definitely earn a passing grade with their combat prowess. But if this is all they've got, there's no reason for them to seek Rhodes Island's help because she thinks the LGD is more than capable of dealing with this problem. Wei agrees and remarks the Lungmen Guard department can easily extinguish the threat. Besides, what Miss Kaltsit is asking for is too dear a price. Kaltsit repeats that Reunion is filled with more than just troopers, so if they don't take the initiative and make proper plans immediately, Lungmen will fall in a matter of weeks. Chen asks if this is their idea of a threat and asks what proof they have, so Amiya interjects and says she saw her, the one burning everything across the field with the raging anger of the infected, the tyrant, Reunion's leader, who was basically a mafia boss. Stunned, Chen asks if she met Reunion's leader, so Amiya says Chernobog fell in one night because Reunion chose to act on the day of the catastrophe and because Talulah herself participated in the mission. They turned infected anger into a raging fire that brought down Chernobog, after which they're going to target Lungmen to expand their influence. Kaltsit says they have one other matter to worry about, the Ursus Empire's next move now that they've lost Chernobog. She asks if they understand what she means, and Wei admits they're right. He agrees to follow their advice and sign this agreement with them, but what they are asking for depends on how well they do. He proposes two conditions. First, Rhodes Island must assist Lungmen in totally eradicating the Reunion threat. But for the second, they'll talk about that once Rhodes Island is done with the first condition. He says the contract is void if they don't accept because it seems like Rhodes Island doesn't have much of a choice either. Emiya says she would like to add an extra stipulation in their contract and states that any interpretation of the clauses must be agreed upon by both parties, so Wei agrees, acknowledging that this stipulation shows their respect for Lungmen. He stamps the contract and welcomes them as Lungmen's doors are now open to them. As they're leaving, Kaltsit says they cannot relax yet as this is Wei the cunning they're talking about, so they can't be sure of what he is planning. Regardless, she admits signing a contract with a man like him is certainly no small feat and tells Emiya she did well in negotiating with him. She hopes the sacrifices they have made will be worthwhile and tells the doctor that it's good to have her back. Emiya asks the doctor to not leave her side as they can be drawn into battle at any moment. They notice two men threatening a few kids, so Emiya threatens them with her arts and orders them to leave this place. The two wimps run away with their tails between their legs. Run! So Emiya and the doctor treat the kids. One of the girls shows her a teddy bear and says Misha made it for her before the guy requests her to save Misha because there are bad guys chasing her, and she said they would be in danger if they stayed together, so she's on the run right now. Emiya agrees to find Misha for them, so the kids promise to find somewhere safe to sleep. Meanwhile, Franca and Liskarm are assigned to look for undocumented infected, so she says she never thought they would end up following the monster inspector. Officer Chen tells them to find someone named Misha, surprising Emiya, who asks to talk to her for a moment. She asks Madame Chen the reason behind this search, but she says she doesn't need to and hangs up. Franca tells her to not mind, and Liskarm says bringing in this infected is their top priority, so Emiya agrees to let Rhodes Recon team know. Liskarm informs them that Misha is a white-haired Ursus girl, and she's about 145 centimeters tall, so Emiya says protecting them is their top priority. Emiya and Liskarm corner Misha, who tries to desperately run away, but Emiya says they want to help her, and says she works for Rhodes Island Pharmaceuticals, an organization that helps infected like them. Misha hurriedly asks how they know she's infected before the doctor and Franca arrive as well. Emiya says they know Misha is being followed and offer to protect her and take her somewhere safe. However, Misha thinks they're lying and says they are just going to lock her up, declaring that she knows the infected and how they're treated here. Emiya insists they're really trying to help her, who Emiya asks how they would her, and says it's not that simple. Franca says they would have brought her in a long time ago if they wanted to before Emiya shows Misha her infected scars and says they're both similar. Misha asks why they are helping her, so Emiya claims it's because her friends asked them to. Liskarm warns her that if she stays on the run, those kids might find themselves in danger, and Emiya tells Misha they want to protect her and her friends. She asks them come with them, and Misha slowly agrees. A girl watches the area Emiya and the others are in and remarks that it looks like the party's getting started. Emiya informs Madame Chen that they have Misha, so she tells her to bring the target to a rendezvous location immediately and says the LGD will make sure it's completely safe. Franca annoyingly says she's treating them like her servants, and Liskarm says it looks like the partnership's in name only, but Emiya says they should head to the rendezvous point since the LGD will make sure it's safe. Misha asks if they were planning to hand her over to the LGD from the beginning, but Emiya assures her that it's just because the LGD wants to take her into protective custody. Misha smiles and admits she's an idiot for almost believing them. Amiya says she really wants to help her and is going to negotiate with the LGD to let Rhodes Island protect her and the other infected. Misha says there is no way they will agree to that and tells Amiya that she could have just told her she was taking her and instead of lying if that's what she intended to do from the start. Amiya says that's not it because they're not trying to capture her but admits that might not make a difference to her. Franca tells Misha she can't outrun them for much longer and Liskarm remarks that she'd be better off accepting the LGD's protection for now, considering her circumstances. The doctor asks her to put her faith in Amiya before the girl from before. Exusie suddenly lands in front of them, proving Penguin Logistics delivers everywhere, even slums, and says she missed them a lot. Franca asks what she's doing here when she's got work at Penguin Logistics, so Exusie says she thinks things are going to get pretty hectic from here on out since lots of menacing-looking men are surrounding this location for some reason. As they start walking, she reveals that every route out of the slums is swarming with hostiles, who are probably the Reunion fighters and the infected hiding in the slums, and it wouldn't be all that strange for the slum dwellers to take Reunion's side when they have been oppressed for so long. Amiya says it doesn't matter because they have to get out of here and get Misha to safety. Suddenly, they're attacked by the arts of the Reunion troops, so Amiya asks Exusie to take care of Misha, and they quickly start taking down the grunts. As Misha's running away with Exusie, she wearily stumbles out of fatigue as Amiya and the others swiftly defeat the troops. Franca confusingly says it looked like they were waiting for them before Exusie points out that there are more troops coming and Amiya remarks that she wants to avoid fighting as much as possible for Misha's sake. Liskarm questions how they can find a safe route out of here, so Exusie says they can depend on her at times like these because she knows a secret way out that the enemies might not be aware of, though she'll have to check to see if it's safe first. She tells Amiya and the others to head in a specific direction and says she'll be disappearing for a moment. The doctor offers Misha her hand and Amiya asks if she's able to walk that far as they get going. They cautiously enter a room in a deserted building to find Texas inside, who remarks that they sure took their time. Amiya inquires about the bodies strewn around the room and why she's here, so Texas says Exusie called her. Franca sees that she can be considerate sometimes, so Texas reveals that it looks like the Reunion troops here have a lot of reinforcements at their disposal. They were still underground not too long ago, but they're out in the open in large groups now. Amiya remarks that Reunion is after all using the slums to build their influence in Lungmen and might probably be after Misha. Liskarm says this is probably something only Lungmen and Reunion know. Texas receives text from Exusie and informs them that she's made sure the route is secure, so they decide to get going, but a gas bomb suddenly gets thrown inside and a unique-looking troop finds Misha. Texas quickly starts fighting them, so some Reunion troops arrive as backup. Amiya and the others quickly get away and the troop's leader says this day has finally come. Franca asks if there's a way up and Texas quotes one of Penguin Logistics' mottos, "Do whatever you need to do to get to your destination." They reach a rooftop and meet Exusie, who says they will be jumping from here since there's no way the enemy would expect them to do that. Exusie asks Texas why she didn't defeat the troops for storming up the stairs, so Texas says she didn't ask her to go that far. Exusie leaps to another roof, so Amiya tells the others to go after her while she holds the troops off. She jumps forward with Misha, and the troops' leader frustratingly loses them again before Exusie destroys a part of the board they jumped off of and says this path is only for them. What a cheeky little brat. Liskarm tells the others that they're almost at the rendezvous point Madame Chen designated for them before Misha starts faltering and wearily says she's just feeling a bit dizzy. Amiya says they should take a break even though Exusie points out that they're almost at their destination. Misha asks Amiya about Reunion, so Amiya explains they're a group of infected and slowly admits the reason them and the other infected are fighting each other is because they chose two completely different paths. Reunion claims they're creating a place for infected called home, but that also means they will kill all infected and any who oppose their ideals, but Rhodes Island is trying to find a way for infected and non-infected to coexist. Since they have both chosen different paths for themselves, conflict is unavoidable. Misha frighteningly remarks that she doesn't know what happened. All of a sudden, everything went crazy in the streets of Chernobog like a war had broken out. She was so scared she didn't know what was going and the only thing she could do was run. The doctor asks Misha how long she's been here, so she thinks it's been a week. After she got to Lungmen, she found out she was growing. She suddenly winces in pain and the doctor realizes she's showing symptoms of both acute and chronic oropathy. Amiya injects her as a form of emergency treatment, but says they have to get her properly treated soon. She says they will ask Lungmen to let them take her back to Rhodes Island for treatment. They decide to get going and Exusie cheerily says they just need to cross this path to reach their destination. Meanwhile, some gangsters from the slums and reunion troops try to convince the others to join them since they supposedly don't want to fight. Yeah, like we would really believe that. The others tell them to open their eyes because the reunion destroyed their homes, but the gangsters still try to get them to join. As the squad is listening to them arguing, they wonder what they should do, and Exyuse says they should take this chance to slip past them and get out of the slums. The gangsters start beating the civilians up, so Misha assures her she's fine and tells her to go. Emiya smiles and promises to be quick. She asks the doctor to take care of Misha, and Franca remarks that she did, after all, make the right choice in coming with them. They easily take down the gangsters, and Emiya tells a civilian to get out of here since it's dangerous, but the man angrily asks where they're supposed to go. He says this is their home. Even if they tear the whole place down, they have nowhere to go. Exyuse questions how the punks at Reunion dare to call themselves the savior of the infected and calls them a bunch of liars. Texas admits that despite all this, there are people who believe them and buy their story. Exyuse wonders why, so Franca explains that Reunion makes the infected feel like all their dreams could actually come true. If they can look away from the harsh reality for a moment and think they can get saved from it, it doesn't matter. It's all a fantasy because the harsher the reality, the more they want something to hold on to, but Rhodes Island will never lie about being able to do something they can't. She says there's no way they would believe a little bunny girl who can't flatter them or tell them lies. Misha steps forward and says she believes her, so Emiya happily thanks her. As the troops leader is walking through a desert, she meets Talulah and says everything is in place, so it's time to move. Talulah says it's true that taking Lungmen will be beneficial to the reunion, however it's too risky and the price is going to be steep. The leader, who's revealed to be Crown Slayer, asks Talulah why she's so fixated on Lungmen, so Talulah points to a distant building and says it's a symbol of Lungmen. She came back here because she wants to take back everything that belongs to them and to make them pay because it's more fun that way. Madame Chen meets Rhodes Island and tells them they're late, so Emiya explains they were ambushed by Reunion multiple times on the way here, and that is not an excuse because a considerable Reunion force is occupying the slums. She tells them that it's not safe here either and asks Madame Chen to get Misha away from here as soon as possible. Chen tells Misha that the LGG will protect her from now, and she goes with the troop. Emiya tells Chen she has a request and asks her to promise her she will guarantee Misha's safety and give her the medical attention she needs as her condition is very serious, and once everything is done, she wants to take her to Rhodes Island for treatment. Chen agrees to relay her request to Chief Wei and says they will transfer her to Rhodes Island as soon as they're done if they don't run into any problems with her. Emiya asks Chen if they can trust her, so she says they can and walks away. As Misha is about to leave, Emiya says they are just saying goodbye for the time being and assures her that Rhodes Island will always welcome her. She asks Misha if she can teach her to make the dolls she stitched for the little kids, saying Misha agrees to make them together. Franca says the mission is done for now as the squad from Lungmen leaves with Misha. They wonder about Misha's origins before Exyuse says the LGD is always scary and Texas say they'll get going now that everything's done. Exyuse cheerily asks if they want her to take them back to Rhodes Island, but Emiya thanks her for the offer and explains she would like to ask Penguin Logistics to keep investigating Reunion for them. Texas says they should get going in that case and agrees to inform them as soon as they find something out. When they leave, Misha says they should return to Rhodes Island, but Liskar asks how they're getting there when the entire area is filled with Reunion forces. Emiya says it doesn't matter and it would actually be better if they came after them in the first place, so that they can gather all the operators scattered in the slums. She says they should do what they can to ensure Misha's safety, while Misha asks Chen why they were looking for her and if it's because she's infected. She remarks that she doesn't remember doing anything they might want her for, so Chen says she isn't the reason, it's her father. She explains that Misha's father was Chernobog's most renowned scientist, and Reunion wants to get their hands on his daughter. They don't have a clear idea of what their objective is, but they deemed it necessary to make sure she doesn't fall into their hands. Misha remarks that she might be losing her freedom for a while in that case and recognizes her as Dragon Lady, the one the people at the slums told her about. She explains they said there was a Dragon Lady who always helped them out and requests her to please keep taking care of them. Madame Chen says Lungmen doesn't recognize the infected or the slum dwellers as citizens, but regardless, she's always willing to do her job. They suddenly get attacked and Chen hurriedly shields her from a grenade as W and her troops start detonating the explosives set in their path. Meanwhile, Franca questions how they can be so persisting while running away from a group of troops, so Liskarm takes them out and asks how they managed to get so many of them inside the city. They start running but suddenly come face to face with a small army of the Reunion troops and their leader, who asks if they handed Misha over to Lungmen. Emiya questions what it has to do with her, so she angrily asks why she's helping Lungmen despite being infected herself. She declares that what they've done is a betrayal of all the infected and tells her that she will pay for the lives of their brethren with her blood. Emiya tells them that they were the first to hate, they hurt the first innocent, threw the first stone, and even back in Chernobyl, it was all them. The reunion troops rush forward to attack, so the Rhodes Island operatives move forward as well, and Emiya asks the doctor to take command. Meanwhile, Chen fights Crownslayer and her troops. She tells Misha to not leave her side before Yobi says she's like a knight who protects the princess, but unfortunately, they don't have much time to play with them. She explodes a building above them, so Chen tries to get Misha away from the impact, but she collapses. Chen starts fighting the troops and gets cornered by them before W picks Misha up and zips away with her, remarking that she will be taking the princess for now. Chen angrily asks her troops where the special instigation force is, so his subordinate says they've been delayed by reunion, and there's only one unit, shocking her. Franca fights the troops' leader, Skull Shatterer, who is informed that the operation has been a success, so they retreat for the time being. Emiya worryingly notices that something doesn't feel right when they retreated so quickly, and the doctor shockingly realizes Reunion's current target isn't Rhodes Island, it's Misha. Emiya and the others meet up with Madame Chen and inquire about the situation. Chen says Reunion took her hearing, which Liskarm remarks that they were always one step ahead. Chen says they disappeared behind a building and they still don't know their exact location. She admits this is all her fault as Emiya assures the doctor they can still make it. Emiya asks Madame Chen why they were looking for Misha, so Chen says they have no reason to tell her that, but Emiya points out that they do because the contract stated that Rhodes Island is to follow the LGD's commands, but a joint operation isn't going to work if they don't trust each other. Rhodes Island made the decision to fight alongside the LGD to protect Lungmen, but despite that, Lungmen is refusing to provide them with any necessary information. She reminds Chen that they are not their enemies, it's Reunion. Chen remarks that she sounded a bit like the doctor just now and admits it would be a real headache if the contract got torn up, so they should go somewhere else to talk. Emiya finds out about Misha's father and asks if Misha is being hunted because she's the kid of some big shot. They ask if Misha has some sort of information on Chernobyl as well, so Chen admits they were taking her into custody to find out. There's no telling how much she knows. She could know nothing or know everything. She remarks that Reunion has their sights set on Lungmen next, and part of their plan was to abduct Misha, but they can't let them get their hands on anything, no matter how low the risk factor may be. She starts leaving to go find Misha, so Emiya says they want to help.
Can I help you?
But Chen says the mission is LGD's, besides, it's thanks to her negligence that Reunion was able to abduct her. Franca remarks that she didn't expect the famous monster inspector to be such an honest girl, so Chen says she's just trying to fulfill her responsibilities. The doctor explains that this was a joint operation, so Rhodes Island shares responsibility too, and Emiya asks her to let them come with her. Chen explains that Reunion forces are starting to gather around here to slow them down and tells them to get in formation because they will eliminate the Reunion threat. They head out and start battling the Reunion as Chen tells the LGD forces to show them what they're capable of. The Rhodes Island squad rains down attacks on them from above, and a voice asks them to cover the LGD and flank Reunion from both sides. A guard asks Chen to keep the damage to a minimum, so she says they don't need to tell her that and tells the Reunion soldiers that they don't need them to trash this place. As they watch the Reunion forces retreating, Emiya says she didn't expect the Reunion forces to have reached this size before an arrow suddenly fires down on Chen and a woman appears out of thin air to protect her. Chen remarks that it took her long enough to show up. Hashiguma apologizes for her tardiness and agrees to make up for it before rushing forward and taking a soldier down. Emiya watches Chen and her department swiftly taking down the troops, and the doctor acknowledges the Lungmen guard department. As they take down the final few troops, Chen questions if the special inspection was really tied down by them, so Hashiguma explains the enemy was exceptionally powerful and they could only stay on the defensive. She can seem distracted, like she had no interest in them whatsoever. Chen introduces her to Emiya and the doctor as one of the LG's elites before Hashiguma sincerely thanks them for their help. Emiya says she was just doing what everyone would before Franca arrives and asks Chen what the plan is now. She says they're going to find every single Reunion group and crush them because they must all be eliminated. Franca guiltily says that's just an extermination operation before Emiya tells Chen that they've already asked Penguin Logistics to track Misha and they will definitely find her in no time. She adds that they will engage Reunion in the slums and try to find Misha while waiting for information because from here on out, Rhodes Island will work with the LGD to find Misha. Hochiguma smiles and says she has some solid leadership skills and can see why Madame Chen. Misha dreams about Emiya saying goodbye to her and Madame Chen telling her to stay by her side. She suddenly wakes up in bed and gets up before a reunion troop thankfully sees that he's awake and asks if she's okay now. He asks if she's fine now and explains he heard about her from Skull Shatterer, who enters and tells the man, Ivan, to come help the patrol. Ivan leaves and says goodbye to Misha. Skull Shatterer remarks that it looks like her flare-up has passed. Misha asks to so he reveals his face, seeing which Misha starts crying and tearfully embraces him, happy to see that he's still alive. The guy says the man who used to go by the name of Alex is dead and his name is Skull Shatterer now. Sounds like he went through a heavy metal phase. Meanwhile, Chen and Hoshiguma take down some reunion troops faster than a Black Friday sale are sold out, and Franco wonders where they're all coming from. Liskarm informs Emiya that these aren't the troops they were looking for, which is why they should expand their area. Meanwhile, Misha follows Alex and asks where they're going, so he says they're heading for training because he wants her to come with him. She stops and asks why he joined Reunion when they were the ones who wreak havoc on Chernobog and are doing the same in Lungmen now. They're sacrificing children and innocents, and it's wrong. Alex asks if she knows how many infected have been sacrificed and says they're naturally trading an eye for an eye. Misha protests that Reunion is even sacrificing people whose only crime is not doing what they say, but he declares that Reunion is enlightened, like a really aggressive self-help group. They fight for the freedom of the infected. If she chooses to avoid the reunion and not join them, he won't say that's a wrong decision. However, he's already decided that he wants to fight this cruel world alongside the reunion. He asks if she really believes anyone is innocent when no one treats the infected as human, neither the government nor its people. He questions if the people aren't accomplices in this and says he's been treated like vermin that needs to be exterminated ever since he became an infected that day. Even though he was a kid, his father and those men from the government took him away. It was a cold, snowy day and he tried to fight back as hard as he could. His mother tried to protect him and chased after them, but then Misha suddenly asks him to stop it and tearfully apologizes. He says he isn't saying she's the one who should be blamed because they were still kids back then and there was nothing she could have done. That's just how things were back then, but they're different now. He declares that Reunion has given him the courage to fight and says it's salvation for the infected. She slowly argues that Emiya and Rhodes Island protected her. He angrily tells her to not be fooled because Rhodes Island may claim that they helped the infected, but they're just traitors and servants of the powerful. Enraged, she asks if she knows how many of them Rhodes Island has hurt and says all they care about is getting rid of them in the end. She protests that Rhodes Island didn't kill anyone. They may have fought, but they never took a life, so he intensely tells her that Rhodes Island's ways will never change anything, but Reunion's will. These lands, everything across the world, they can completely change everything. Sounds like a load of useless crap spouted by a weirdo who has been emotionally manipulated to the limit. He declares that Reunion has that power and asks Misha to join him so that he can protect her. Meanwhile, ex-USA and Texas scout their hideout from afar and remark that it looks like there's a lot of them. Ex-USA says it's not a bad spot for a base since no one would dare go near an originium quarry, and suddenly spots Misha leaving with Skull Shatterer. She says they need to inform Misha, but suddenly notices the troops coming their way.
I never thought of it that way before.
Texas asks if she's texted Misha and says they just need to hold the troops here as long as they can while the others arrive. Skull Shatterer teaches Misha to use a gun and asks if she's following so far. When she confirms, he completely obliterates a target and explains that there's more to shooting than just arts because you detonate the shell of your arts. He says he should learn how to defend herself and hands over the gun despite her looking reluctant. He asks her to control her breathing and happily exclaims that they're both the same when she uses her arts to detonate the shell. He tells her to do it again while it's still fresh on her mind before Ivan alarmingly hurries towards them and says Rhodes Island is coming because they found them. He angrily tells him to gather everyone to repel them. Meanwhile, Chen, Hoshiguma, and the others rush to the hideout, remarking that they found the hideout, which is located in an abandoned quarry in the Lungmen outskirts. Amiya tells all units to head in at once because they will save Misha, so they should prepare to storm in. As Skull Shatterer is loading his gun, Misha asks if they have to fight Rhodes Island and believes they'll understand if they talk to them, but he asks her to wake up already. He angrily says he's told her before that Rhodes Island turned their backs on the infected, which is why they have nothing to say to traitors. He asks her to at least trust him if she doesn't want to trust Reunion, so as he's about to leave, she asks him to promise he'll come back. He assures her that she won't be alone again and they'll return home together. When this is all over, he meets Lu outside, who remarks that he needed her help after all. So he says the enemy's more of a handful than they thought. Things aren't really like Talulah said, so no matter what happens, he needs her to protect Misha. She says that's easy to say, but if they screw up, they will definitely come for Misha next. He says they can't lose then, but Misha remarks that after looking at the two forces, it doesn't look like he stands a chance in a fair fight. He asks if she has a better idea, so she asks if he knows about the one in the hood who always stays with the bunny girl and says she's Rhodes Island's commander, the brains of the operation, and if they take out the brain, the whole body falls apart and everything will go nice and smooth. He even offers to let him lend her team for a while, so he declares that their target is Rhodes Island's commander, the Doctor. Looking at the terrain, the squad remarks that this is the perfect place to bait an enemy into a trap and has real lousy visibility too because the wind's picked up, but Chen says it won't be a problem because this is a group of ragtag terrorists barely held together. She says Hashiguma and part of the special instigation unit will stay there and tells them all to not give the enemy time to reorganize and to whittle down their numbers. They face the Reunion army and charge forward to battle as the Doctor commands the sniper operators to focus their fire on the enemy's front lines so that they can break their formation. On top of that, she orders the snipers and casting operators to continue interfering with their rear guard and to not give them time to reorganize so that they can tear down their front line as well. As they're rushing forward, they get attacked by the caster arts, so Liskarm rushes forward to shield them and shoots some of them down before Amiya takes out the casters. While guarding Misha, Demlu tells her to not worry
It's all fine, don't worry about it,
because they won't get involved in the mess down there. She says she's got stuff to do and leaves after telling Misha to give her a call if she needs anything. As the battle continues, Chen tells her soldiers to spread out and attack rather than gathering in specific places like a bunch. Two men rush forward to kill her, but she takes them out and declares that she won't go easy on them if they raise their sword against her. The Doctor tells all operators to advance towards the enemy stronghold, and Franka tells them to get going so that they can get these annoyingly bad bombers, but Liskarm reminds her that rescuing Misha is their top priority right now. A grunt suddenly attacks Liskarm, so she hurriedly blocks him and Franka rushes forward to attack, but he blocks her attack. A grunt relentlessly attacks Texas, so Ayam deactivates his attacks and tells her to leave the casters to her. She asks her to take Exusei and mop the enemies around them. The Doctor worryingly watches them, but Madame Chen reassures her that the enemy numbers are dwindling, which is why they still have the advantage here. Amiya tells them to keep up the pressure because they have almost overcome the enemy and declares that they'll save Misha this time. The Doctor suddenly gets informed that there is a heat source approaching her as she gets attacked by a shell. Shocked, Amiya rushes to protect her and Chen wonders who attacked the Doctor before Gebuyu suddenly attacks her and admits things are going much better than she expected. The Doctor wearily gets up, but Skull Shatterer rushes to attack her, so Hashiguma shields her and tells him that he doesn't have what it takes to pierce her hanya. She pushes him back and tells him to not get in their way before deflecting the shells he throws at her. She throws him down and declares that it was foolish of him to charge into the enemy's backline alone, but he shoots the shells with his shield. He wearily says he will blow them all up, so a soldier rushes to stop him and one tries to help the Doctor up, but she hurriedly tells him to run away. Skull Shatterer suddenly surrounds himself with heat and Amiya, and the others rush forward, realizing he's about to blow himself up. Skull Shatterer runs towards the Doctor and inwardly apologizes to Misha because he won't be able to keep their promise. As he's about to explode, he angrily tells the Doctor to die, but Amiya horrifyingly thinks he can't hurt the Doctor and reflexively shoots out her arts, impaling him before he can activate the explosion. Stunned, Misha watches from afar as Skull Shatterer questions what this is and wearily tries to step towards the Doctor, but falls down. Shocked, the others turn towards Amiya, who questions what she did and desperately claims it wasn't her. She starts shaking as the Reunion troops shockingly realize they got Skull Shatterer. Ivan tells them to avenge his death, but Madame Chen tells all units to pull out. Hashiguma hurriedly protests that this is their chance to wipe out Reunion, but she says they can't continue their search of Misha with the way things are and will just end up wasting lives if they keep fighting. She affirms that this is an order, so Hoshiguma agrees and they fall back as Misha breaks down and questions why Amiya killed him. Hoshiguma informs Madame Chen that the Reunion forces are still in the stronghold and don't show any signs of trying to escape into the surrounding areas. Chen says the sandstorm will let up soon and orders her to keep scoping out the area with the others and have everyone get ready to move. Amiya wonders if they will cling to getting revenge even if it costs them their lives, and tells the Doctor she was scared of losing someone important to her again, although now she's just losing sleep over it. She admits she was scared and tells the Doctor she will protect her no matter the cost, even if it means she has to kill, but there might have been another way and she might not have needed to kill him, but she couldn't find it. She remarks that she didn't want to show her that side of her and acknowledges her weakness. The Doctor tells Amiya she's only here because she saved her and thanks her for it. Amiya gets up and says it's because they promised each other, while Gyu suddenly appears at their base and tells Chen she's not here for her this time. She tells Amiya that her friends wants a little heart-to-heart conversation with her and gives her a walkie-talkie before disappearing. Emiya hurriedly asks Misha if she's okay and says they'll come rescue her right away, but she slowly asks Emiya why she killed him and reveals Skull Shatterer was her baby brother. She reminds Emiya of how she said Rhodes Island and Reunion chose different paths, but remarks that Rhodes Island slaughters Reunion and the infected too. She remarks that she's always turned a blind eye to the infected's sorrow and pain, and remarks that it was no different when they took away her brother for being infected. He kept calling for her in tears, but she covered her ears and hid herself. Now that he has been taken from her again, she finally gets it. She breaks down and says her head hurts so much she can't bear it. Reunion wants everyone to know the pain that the infected age forced to endure. That's the punishment she deserves, but as an infected herself, she will stand with them because it's time for her to pay for the crimes she's committed. Emiya hurriedly tells her to not be hasty because putting herself in the shoes of the infected won't change anything. She says they know how she feels and asks her to trust them, but Misha apologizes and says there's no other way because she's not as strong as she is. She says goodbye and hangs up while Emiya desperately calls out her name and questions what she should do. Madam Chen holds a blade to her throat like an edgy girl in her teens who hates Taylor Swift and says a leader should never show hesitation.
Never.
No matter what, because that is a fatal mistake on the battlefield. She says Misha has chosen to side with Reunion and asks Emiya if she thinks she can still save her. Hashiguma reports that they're ready to leave at any time, so Chen sheathes her blade and says the LG's objective is to get Misha. They have to bring her back for Lungmen's sake, which is the case for Rhodes Island too. She announces they will be leaving in 5 minutes and heads off with Hashiguma, but Franka tells Emiya that it's not like her to hesitate, and Liskarm says they will follow her on whatever she chooses to do. Exusei declares that they're going to follow Rhodes Island to the end now that they've come this far, and the doctor asks Emiya what she wants to do. Emiya slowly says she wants to talk to Misha and believes she will understand if they talk to her, so the doctor says they should go see her. Misha tells W she wants to be alone with him, but W says she has to protect her even though it's a huge pain in the butt. Show a little consideration, Missy, your comrade literally just died. Misha furiously says she's sick of everyone treating her like she's someone really important, so Do sighs and remarks that everyone died for absolutely nothing then. She says they'll have even more dead bodies on their hands soon, and then the Reunion troops who fought for her will all be dead. She asks if that means Skull Shatterer died for nothing, so Misha tells her to go without her if she wants to run because she promised him they would return home together, so if she's going home, she's going with him and everyone else because they're all just like her. They're all infected, they all need to be protected, they all have nowhere to go, but if he was here, he would protect everyone, which is why Skull Shatterer can't die. He won't die and she will make sure he lives on. Meanwhile, the squad takes down enemy defense lines and Franka remarks that there's a lot more near the stronghold. Hochiguma tells them that the LGD isn't like Rhodes Island, and if they resist, there's no guarantee of them surviving. Exusei and Texas watch the war from above and inform Emiya that they haven't seen Misha yet. The doctor remarks that they should keep changing before Emiya asks her to change the mission's objective, and they all turn towards a lone figure standing in the distance. The Reunion troops suddenly exclaim it's a miracle as Skull Shatterer rises again like the Batman from the Christopher Nolan films. Shocked, Emiya says it's not Skull Shatterer and hurriedly informs Chen that she has a request. The Reunion troops quickly start clearing a path, believing Skull Shatterer is still alive, and Ivan hurries to his side, happily saying the news that wasn't enough to kill him since he just reunited with Misha after all. He remarks that she should have gotten out by now and excitedly says they're all going to head back to Chernobog together once they've finished off the LGD. She doesn't say anything and gives him a flare so that the Reunion forces can evacuate. Ivan questions what he means and says they can still fight, but Skull Shatterer points her gun at him and rushes off as Ivan angrily questions how running away is going to ease them anywhere. Meanwhile, Liskarm remarks that things are different this time because the Reunion troops genuinely want to finish them off this time and return home. On the battlefield, Misha wearily falls down, so Emiya approaches her and asks why she resorted to this. She declares that what she has done is inexcusable and begs her to just listen to her one last time. Misha slowly asks what the point is and points her gun towards her, so Emiya raises her hand as well, ready to cast her arts. She slowly starts summoning her arts, but Misha apologizes for never teaching her to make that dull hearing, which Emiya's hand starts trembling and she slowly drops it, deactivating. Misha's finger that is on the trigger starts trembling before a guard takes her down and her vision starts getting blurry. She collapses as Emiya watches in complete shock and starts shaking while gasping her name. Shen tells Emiya she told her not hesitate and says a moment of indecisiveness can turn the tide of a battle, questioning if she still doesn't understand the weight of the responsibility she carries. Emiya shakily pulls Misha's mask off as Chen remarks that this is ending they all face. She's informed that the enemy is surrendering, so she orders Hoshiguma to signal the collection team as they've found the target. Devi, who's watching from afar, gravely remarks that it looks like their fates intertwine, they clash and cross with each other, and then the best chess players find themselves in checkmate at the most unexpected moments, and that's why all's well in the end. Meanwhile, the Rhodes Island soldiers gravely watch as the reunion soldiers get taken in and Misha's body is carried away. Chen asks Amiette if she's going to keep the mask as a keepsake and says she can suit herself, but warns her that one day her room will be filled with masks like his one soon. Just mourning the dead won't change anything. And when they have to, she and the LGD draw their swords without hesitation. But that's not Rhodes Island's way. Welcoming the infected with open arms and saving them, that's not what the LGD does. She really isn't making herself very likable. She tells Amiette that she just walks along the path she has chosen and it only belongs to her. Later, Amiette says she wants to break these chains of hatred and questions if it will really work. The doctor tells Amiette she saw her path in the darkness when she woke up and found her path. She's always ahead of them and lights the way for them all, which is why she will always follow her on this path. Hearing this, Amiette gets up and thanks the doctor before they slowly get going.